Okay, the topic is we've made little or no progress in reverse engineering extraterrestrial anti-gravity technology. Now, you have to look back at when indications show anti-gravity craft already exists. You're going all the way back to 1915. Tesla was talking about a flying machine that he created that could, my flying machine will have neither wings nor propellers. You can see it on the ground. You'd never guess that it was a flying machine, yet it can move at will through the air in any direction with perfect safety. This was way back in 1915. And he was conversing with Maria Orsic, who was getting telepathic messages from the Albarian solar system that gave her technology instructions on how to build a flying saucer, basically. And she gave that to Dr. Schumann, who found viable physics for development. So by 1934, the Nazis developed and had anti-gravity craft 20 years ahead of the US. As Professor Herman Oberth stated, we had help from the people of other worlds. 1939, a single U.S. Navy spy reveals to Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal the Nazis' secret space program. And Forrestal started a spy program in Germany, which William Tompkins was involved with. Now, at the fall of the Soviet Union, Vladimir Terzitzky, he gathered the Nazi SS secret documents that showed they had a number of craft that they developed. Here's a large Andromeda craft. It's like a big cigar-shaped craft, and these were the different, starting with the Hanabu 1, Hanabu 2, and so forth.
Hmm.
By 1942, of course, if you have this technology, they established a moon base. And before the end of the war, they planned to infiltrate in, create this matrix of perception to hide their secret space program. Uh, Over 250,000 Germans, over 100 U-boats were missing, and the Reich's top scientists were unaccounted for, all going to Antarctica. And they took all the anti-gravity craft from Germany with them. And so, in order to hide all this, the Rockefellers, working in alliance with the Nazis, they actually rewrote the history of World War II to hide the elements of the Nazi escape and infiltration of school children in the future studying it. Now, this advanced technology was used against Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump, where James Forrestal sent him down to attack the Nazi base, and all their aircraft were wiped out. They had directed energy weapons on their anti-gravitic craft. Project Dove, the CIA and US Air Force had psychological operations that influences every single Hollywood movie having to do with extraterrestrials, starting with the first one, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So it's interesting how, you know, you have all these negative images of the War of the Worlds, invaders from Mars, Earth versus the flying saucers, and, all these things starting back in the 50s. Now, the Invention Secrecy Act of in 1952, any inventor that comes up with anti-gravity, you can see it here on the list, he automatically gets issued a national security order, which states that your invention has been deemed to be a detriment to the national security, therefore you cannot share it with anybody. So another reason why we don't have anti-gravity. Now, they flew their craft over the Capitol building in 1952 to intimidate the Truman and Eisenhower administration, eventually led to a surrender. MJ-12 started a psychological operation using George Adamski to keep the public awareness from the Nazi craft and say they were our space brothers from Venus. Here you can see a picture of the photograph Adamski took, and it's identical to the Hanabu 2. Now, the Nazi craft were landing, one in Hawaii, another one in Nebraska, and the craft had, Iron Cross swastikas on it, and the pilots had Nazi uniforms and spoke in High German language. So this was something very embarrassing that they wanted to keep the public from being aware that the Germans had a breakaway civilization and they were in possession of technology that was far in advance of what the United States had. Dr. Stephen Greer, in 2013, in front of former members of Congress, an NSA agent revealed to him that he saw inside the vault that we had achieved anti-gravity by October of 1954. And from that year, we haven't needed rockets, jets, internal combustion engines, surface roadways between cities, like Doc Brown in Back to the Future says, where we're going, we
Mhm.
don't need roads. Uh, Mark McCandish, fellow witness,
He
we had
died. He
anti,
died a few years ago, didn't he?
he
Yeah,
did,
tragically. Yeah.
tragically, yes. He was a good friend. He testified we had these alien reproduction vehicles that go faster than the speed of light, built back in the 1950s. Here's an actual photograph of one of them, and he did the schematic diagram of it. 1956, Young Men magazine talked about the gravity engines that are coming out. And after this came out, you didn't hear anything more about it. 1958, NASA's created, run by the former Nazi SS officer, keeping us believing we need rockets to overcome gravity. 1959, now Tesla knew how to create an anti-gravity craft, and he showed Otis Carr how to do that back in 1937. By 1959, Otis created and patented his OTC-X1 spacecraft. 2 weeks after the successful flight of the craft, the FBI and other government agency, in a secret raid, shut down his operation and confiscated everything. The FBI told Carr that his project was being closed, quote, because of your threat to overthrow the monetary system of the United States. In other words, this was using like free energy and anti-gravity, and that would upset the apple cart.
And it always does.
1993, Ben Rich, head of Lockheed Skunk Works, at a speech at UCLA School of Engineering. We've already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. They said they could take ET home. We figured out an error in the equations. You know, they have the technology. Now, I was one of the top secret witnesses. Here I am. We were exposing this to the mainstream media of the world, and it inspired a hacker in the UK, Gary McKinnon, who got into the computer systems, saw the fleet-to-fleet transfers of non-terrestrial officers, and the US Navy Solar Warden secret space program, which has this battle fleet of 8 large cigar-shaped craft that are in our solar system that the U.S. Navy developed going back to my God, going back to the 1940s. Now, Admiral Wilson had a meeting with Dr. Eric Davis, and it was transcribed. They were talking about projects that they were working of that was not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands. In 2006, an anti-gravitic triangular, like a TR-3B spacecraft, was granted a U.S. patent. This anti-gravity craft, here's the patent number. And in 2018, the U.S. Navy is granted a patent for advanced anti-gravity design and acknowledges that it's being operable. So, and here's the U.S. Navy patent for that. Now, in 2021, both of these testimonies would have confirmed that we have anti-gravity technology. In November of 2019, former Air Force intelligence specialist Mike Tuber claims that the 2004 Nimitz anti-gravity Tic Tac belongs to the U.S. Air Force. And that's what came out in 2017 on the New York Times. Everybody, including your grandmother, has seen the Tic Tac video, where they showed the Navy pilots and everything.
I knew where
Now,
I was that day. I was actually during an interview with or getting about to get ready for Richard C. Hoagland interview, and he came on and said, "Whatever you had, Mike, scratch it. We got to talk about this."
very suspiciously, in April 6th that year, 2021, Mike Tuber completely retracts his earlier testimony and says, I made the whole thing up. There's nothing to it. It was just a psychological experiment. Why
Mm.
would you go to the effort to say that, you lied and you made the whole thing up, that there's nothing to it? Well, suspiciously, 1 week later, on April 13th, Disclosure Project witness Mark McCandish, whose testimony reveals we have anti-gravitic craft back in the 1950s, had planned on testifying at the June 2021 UFO UAP hearing. He was found dead from a gunshot to the head.
Mhm.
Now, you got to ask, did somebody pay both of these men a visit?
Very possibly. I wouldn't doubt it one bit. That's the thing about you got to question everything, Dan.
So, who has claimed, excuse me, who has claimed we don't have advanced anti-gravitic technology fully developed from reverse engineered extraterrestrial craft, considering everything we just went over?
Become a member on Patreon and support Beyond the Forbidden to watch this full-length interview. With your membership, you will have access to a vast archive of full-length, ad-free interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and much more. So what the hell are you waiting for? The link is in the description.
Now, in 1993, I traveled outside of Area 51, and no recordings were allowed, but I recorded the full 2 hours of it's a clip from the video I took of Bob Lazar, and we met with a group of researchers, and he was being hit with questions nonstop for 2 hours. His testimony has been 100% consistent. Bob basically expressed that due to the highly compartmentalized security structure, they were unable to bring in more scientific community minds into the reverse engineering effort. He was working on a Zeta 2 Reticuli spacecraft that used the element 115, and as you know, and they weren't able to make significant progress because of the compartmentalization. Now you have to think. Now, Bob wasn't exposed to other operations. When you're in a compartmentalized operation, another operation has no idea of what you're doing, and you have no idea what they're doing. So that's just the way compartmentalized works, and it keeps secrets very well. Now, the Admiral Wilson memo that was leaked, the Admiral was told that the reverse engineering of extraterrestrial craft was, quote, going on for years and years with very slow progress, agonizingly slow, with little or no success. And we know that's not true, but that's what he was told. This
Mm.
was the exchange between Dr. Eric Davis and Thomas Wilson, the Admiral. Then Eric Davis goes on the New York Times and is talking about briefing, members of Congress and things about the lack of success they had in reverse engineering off-world vehicles due to difficulties in the understanding of the new physics operating from the recovered craft. And it was his belief that the reverse engineering program suffered from a lack of funding. Right. So, these, I personally, I look at these people as the gatekeepers. And then the hearing that Mark McCandish was going to testify at, you've got the director of Office of Naval Intelligence and other intelligence people that are supposed to be totally clued in on everything that's going on about UFOs, UAPs, right?
Mm.
But they deny they have, the US has any such technology of anti-gravity. And interestingly, that Congressman Mike Gallagher, he wonderfully brought to their attention. Are you familiar with the Admiral Wilson memo, which is a total hot potato, and also the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident where they shut down 10 nuclear-tipped ICBMs with a UFO overhead? And they claimed they had no knowledge of this. And these are the people that are supposed to they're supposed to be fully aware of this. And, you take the average UFO buff and he's aware of this. So, um, again, this seems like a continuation of the gatekeeping of their purpose is basically to deflect interest in this into that, oh, there's nothing happening. So who has spoken of an alien attack from outer space? Hey, going back to 1955, General Douglas MacArthur, he had a huge amount of reports of extraterrestrial activity. He had a top secret gag order by Truman, and he went to the New York Times and said, quote, "The nations of the world will have to unite for the next war, which will be an interplanetary war. The nations of the earth must someday make a common front against an attack by the people of other planets." And then you have President Ronald Reagan's famous speech at the United Nations in 1987. Quote, "Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." And then interestingly, you have this kind of repeated by President Bill Clinton on Jimmy Kimmel regarding the benefits of an alien invasion. His quote, "If we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised," Clinton said. "I just hope it wouldn't be like Independence Day. It may be the only way to unite this increasingly divided world of ours. Think about all the differences among people of Earth would seem small if we were threatened by a space invader." That's the whole theory of Independence Day. Everybody gets together and makes nice. So here we are today. This is 2024. What could this lie possibly serve besides not letting our Earth adversaries know we have this type of technology? I mean, you have to think that, Russia, China, and even our non-adversaries, you have Germany, France, and many other countries. They have developed their own space programs secretly. So wouldn't this technology just alleviate so much, the free energy and anti-gravity, so much problems on this Earth? But, there's been several indications that a plan has been in place for a long time to create a false flag alien invasion. So what evidence is there for a plan for a false flag alien invasion? Well, if you go back to 1967, the report from Iron Mountain got leaked. This leaked document concludes that war, or a credible substitute for war, is necessary if governments are to maintain power. In other words, the need for continually create ongoing enemies through false flag events to perpetuate war on this planet. When President Lyndon Johnson found out about it, he just he hit the roof. He suppressed it for all times. He was really upset that this got leaked. And I went through this document, and I found a curious passage in page 51. Quote, "It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against a danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-the-world invasion threat." Now, when you talk about experiments, now, if they had anti-gravity technology back in 1954, they could have the technology to pull off an experiment to simulate a alien invasion.
How weird is that was on page 51? I don't know. I have a thing with numbers, Area 51, and then they have a quote like that,
Yeah, and then you have Werner von Braun. He's dying of cancer in his deathbed. And yeah, Dr. Carl Rosen as his spokesperson. He testified at the 2001 National Press Club along with other witnesses that I joined. He was shown advanced plans to create these false flag enemies. The first one in a sequence of events would be the Soviets, which would be the first in the series. The next would be terrorists. Now, the next one coming up this was May of 2001 when we disclosed this. We all know what happened in September of 2001 on 9/11. And next would be rogue nations. And we all familiar with North Korea and Iran, right? And then the next would be asteroids. And then he would repeat over and over again, she said, that the final card would be the extraterrestrial threat. But it is all a lie. And then curious, Hillary was concerned that Trump is way ahead in the polls. And so they hired the Benson Strategy Group, and Anonymous was able to retrieve this document where this group that they hired was recommending a false flag alien invasion in order to salvage the Clinton campaign. And you can see here on the list of different things that would keep Trump voters from voting. Let's see, shooting wars in neighborhood, external invading force, the biblical event, and everything. But the one that's listed by attack by extraterrestrials was 38%. That was the highest. So they figured this would be the one of choice. And so the document analyzes a number of these salvage scenarios and recommends one called Fire Sign, which is a false flag extraterrestrial invasion using advanced holographic technology. And this was in 2016. So bottom line is, don't be fooled.